Welcome to the Chief Endurance Officer Podcast. I'm your host, Greg McDonough. Each week, we hear real time stories from athletes and CEOs on how to maximize performance through an endurance mindset. Let's get started. Welcome to the Chief Endurance Officer Podcast. I am super excited for our guest today. He is an impressive athlete, entrepreneur, played 5 seasons of professional baseball with the Kansas City Royals, then transitioned into coaching, leading a 15U team to a top 3 finish in the CABA World Series. He channels that same drive to helping high performers change their relationship with their money so they can transform their lives. He teaches his clients to think, act differently, to break free of their old patterns and build wealth from the inside out. Please welcome the CEO of Reconstructing Wealth, Matt Morizio. Matt, welcome to the show.
Appreciate that intro. That makes me sound maybe cooler than I am. I did not compete nearly double-digit Ironman, so I don't know who's the real athlete here. Well, we'll just leave it at that.
We could switch seats one of these days, and I could sit in the hot seat. But before we do that, Matt, and as a finance guy, I'm really excited about jumping into some details today. But before that, Matt, I love talking about the endurance mindset, and I'd like to know how your endurance mindset has impacted your life unexpectedly.
I guess I've always had the idea that like I want to be the hardest worker, but the hardest worker doesn't necessarily mean the longest sustained effort. That's to me what endurance is. It's really like working through something for an extended period of time. That's where endurance is. And I didn't realize, I suppose, as an athlete that I was learning really how to work through hard things, because in an athlete's world, there are seasons where in season, off seasons, and it's only recently that I've structured my days or my years kind of similarly because it works for my brain, but that's a whole different part of the story. To answer your question, I would say the last, I'm going to call it 8 years. It's been this financial journey where I jumped into this world a few years prior to that. And then I went on this financial roller coaster of highs and lows, and we can get more into the details. But throughout it all, I guess that's where the surprising endurance has lasted or has shown up, where I'm like, holy smokes, it's easy to live on the mountaintop. Everybody knows that, but I've lived in a valley for quite some time. I've never lived in such a valley for such an extended period of time. And I'm still here and I'm still going and I can still do it. Like I can still wake up another day and get myself a chance, get more at bats, if you will. And I guess I never expected to be in such a valley season with 5 children at a time and still go. I guess like that's where it showed up. I'm like, I think of the Babe Ruth quote, it's hard to quit the person who it's hard to beat the person who never gives up. And that's really, to me, what has been my endurance season the last, call it decade or 8 years.
That's a great quote. Matt, I'd love for you to go into a little bit more detail about that valley. There seems to be you're leaving me some breadcrumbs to ask some deeper questions. Can you give us a little bit more insights of what you were going through?
Yeah, I can. Maybe I shouldn't have left those breadcrumbs because it's not really an easy season to talk about, but here we are. I told you before we even got on that I'm going to be honest. Whatever you get is an honest answer. So here goes. So I jumped into the wealth management world without much knowledge about it, without a single client. The guys at the old firm I worked for, Beck Modi, I'll forever be grateful to them because they took a flyer on me because they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And they said, we'll give you a chance. And they gave me a chance with a runway of a salary because they had young families and they understood what that was like. So they wanted to make sure food was on the table. And the thought was, by the way, I took a little bit of a pay cut to even get a significant pay cut, maybe 10% pay cut to jump into that world. And I was willing to do that because I recognized I'm an outsider stepping in. And the thought was, in a year or so, what I built within my practice of the business was going to be enough to sustain and replace that salary they were giving me. So it was kind of like light switches, turn the salary switch off and the fees switch on, and we're all good. But that was great. You know, like Mike Tyson says, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Well, 14 months into it, I got punched in the mouth because the salary switch was turning off they did it on like a declining scale, but it was a significant steep decline. And the production switch, we'll call it, like the fees that I was charging, that did not offset nearly what I needed to support a family. I was living in Massachusetts at the time, call it 8 years ago ish, and I had 5 children. So a family of 7 as a sole provider, the salary ended up looking something like, call it 50K. It's just not enough to provide food and lifestyle for a family. So what ended up happening was savings immediately depleted. I cashed in these old stocks that I was given, like AT&T stock. My grandfather used to work for them, so he gifted me some when I was born. That's gone. I opened up a couple credit cards. Those went to the tops. And there was there was a time in there where I went on this road trip to New York with Jim Bodie, who was one of the founders there. And we were going to the Salvation Army in New York. He would speak to them. They had this annual retirement conference, and he would go and speak to them. And I was there to observe and to learn and to help out however I could. Well, in that trip drive, we'll call it, to New York and back, from Massachusetts to New York, back to Massachusetts, we stopped for like half a dozen coffees, which is my love language. I love that. The problem is, if at any point he didn't offer to pick up the coffee, I literally could not have bought the coffees for the people. I would have had to make up some excuse. So like, oh shoot, I can't, or I don't even know what I was going to say. I was just praying he didn't ask me to pick up the tab ever. Thank God he didn't, because I couldn't have afforded it. I had just enough to cover the mortgage payment the next week. But then I was in the midst of this refinance, because now I learned the language of money. I understood how it worked. Here I am just trying to find different levers to pull: the savings lever, the old investments lever, the credit card lever. That's not a great one, but they're there, kind of like a just in case of emergency. You break glass, right? Like I broke that glass pretty good. I broke a lot of glass. And the next lever I had at my disposal was a home equity refinance, like a home refinance, where I was going to cash out some of the equity in my home to pay off some of those debts and be able to like extend the runway. Well, if anybody's ever gone through a refinance, it's a lot like a closing. If you buy a home, it takes a while, 30 days or so. So we're done with that road trip, and I'm paid the next mortgage. I thought the refinance was going to happen by then, and it didn't. And it just hadn't closed yet. It was in process. There was no issues. It was just taking long. And I didn't have anywhere to turn. So I legitimately, at that moment, now picture this, I'm like early 30s, 5 children. I'm supposed to have it figured out. I have a house. And I had to call my mom and say, look, I just need to borrow your credit card. I think it's only going to be a couple weeks, but I got to buy groceries and I can't do it. I'm in a tight spot. I didn't explain it to her. It's embarrassing to talk about. But I had to go there and I had to borrow her card, and eventually the refinance happened and the runway extended a bit. But that valley season has lasted, to a little bit. It's gone away and it's come back. And this entrepreneurial journey is not for the faint of heart. We'll put it that way. All the while, though, I will say, like, I have learned how the game of money works and recognized, like, you can make it through. Like we started, the endurance of lasting and sustaining those things, so long as you understand the rules of the game, you can stay in the game. And it's hard to beat somebody who's not going to stay in the game. So that's really what it would boil down to. I stayed in the game despite, man, that's a hard time. Like, imagine that headspace where I am coaching and helping people as a licensed financial advisor how to use their money effectively for their future, selling that dream for them through, realistically calling it like their future a dream, because it is, like, that's what we're working towards. Meanwhile, I'm living this financial nightmare at home, and I had to like live in that headspace and split them apart and be okay. It's selling the dream, living the nightmare simultaneously.
Well, Matt, thanks for sharing that. You got my palms sweating just thinking about the up, the down. I've got similar stories with mortgage refinancings and like, it just having that financial distraction and that worry is such a burden to carry for anybody, right? It's like, how am I going to feed my kids tomorrow? How am I going to pay the rent? How am I going to pay the mortgage? And it is that endurance mindset that kind of keeps you standing up and saying, hey, to your point, let's stay in the game. Let's understand the rules. Let's, leverage these rules in a way that kind of extends the runway and extends the runway. Almost like a finish line, right? It's like, hey, it's getting closer, we think, and then it's a little further away, and then it's getting closer. But I'd love to know, how are you using that experience? You mentioned your clients and selling the dream and talking about their financial future. Your approach to financial management is different than others that I've chatted with, and I'd love to know how that experience, your personal experience, sort of has helped you sort of create your philosophy for financial management.
That's a really insightful question. I think about this quote by the founder of a company called Brand Builders Group. His name is Rory Vaden. He says, "You're most well equipped to serve the person you once were." And I really don't think I went through that season for nothing, just to test endurance. And I'm grateful that I had the wherewithal throughout that season to say, okay, I think there's a lesson in here to be learned. I don't think I'm in this just to fall on my face and this is the end of the road. So I took screenshots throughout that entire season. Probably have hundreds of screenshots, and there's a folder in my phone of my financial journey. And there's probably over 100 screenshots there of the maxed out cards and the negative bank balances and the no savings and all of it, all of the stressful times. As much as like my heart's racing and I don't know how I'm going to feed my kids, and like I have to face my wife and say, just trust me again, another day, trust me, like she's wondering, when are we going to get out of this? I was still screenshotting those moments saying there's a lesson in here. There is. And I can tell you now that I am a far more empathetic advisor, and I will give unconventional advice because I've lived an unconventional life. Thankfully, a lot of my clients, like you mentioned earlier, they're growth minded, they're high performing, they're purpose driven families, often providers. And they'll have to live a little bit of a different life because their end goals are a lot different than, I would say, what an average life goal is. And I just yesterday was speaking with a woman who left a corporate career, high paying job to go and launch her own personal training for women because she's gone through her own transformative journey. So I was talking with her, and she was frustrated because she's in the early stages, the early innings, we'll call it, of her entrepreneurial journey. She's obviously she's super savvy businesswoman, but she's in her personal entrepreneurial journey very early. She was frustrated that she's not contributing what she would like to contribute to her retirement accounts and using tax strategies that she wants because she needs to ramp the business up. And because of that valley season, because I've gone through that journey, the advice I'm giving her is not, well, let's cut costs and figure out ways to save into your 401k because that's most important for your future. Instead, I'm telling her, look, you can never match a return in the market, the things I'm going to do for you. You can never match the return that you can get by betting on yourself. You could put $20,000 into a coach or to ad spend on marketing or something, and quite literally that 20 turns into 50 next year. You're not going to get that in the market. On a banner year, a 20% year in the market, you're going to get an extra $4,000, not an extra 30 that you potentially could get. And she, at the end of the call, said, well, thanks for always being a champion in my corner. She's like, it's so different than other advice I normally get. Like, you're my advisor. You should be telling me, stop spending so much, cut costs, like live below your means. And instead you're giving me advice that doesn't benefit you, but like it really does speak to me. And I think that just as finally, like bringing it full circle, that comes from my own understanding of what that journey feels like, particularly what the valley season feels like, and what is necessary to really extend the runway to the extreme. I've lived the extreme. Often people will reference extremes to highlight a point because the extreme makes more sense when you highlight a point. I lived the extreme. Like that, the point was my life, or is my life. So I'm able to understand what the extreme feels like, not just looks like, lives like. every day having to face your wife, face your kids. So that's, I think, at the end of the day, makes me a more empathetic advisor, also gives me a perspective that's unique to be able to help people understand, look, it's just money. It's a tool. It will come. Let's work on the inside, change you from the inside out.
I love the way you said that money is a tool. And it's interesting, you know, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs as well, and I'm one myself. And that return on invested capital, to your point of your own business, it can be materially different than the stock market or other types of investment vehicles, up until a point where it's not. And then maybe there's a signal in your business that things need to change. But, you know, as a business owner, we tend not to look at that. We tend not to look at, hey, I put in X amount of dollars and I'm getting 2X net income every year. Now, how I choose to spend that, I could be reinvesting it in poor decisions in my business or just taking distributions. But from an entrepreneurial perspective, business owner perspective, that's a real vehicle, but it should also be looked at as a tool and a vehicle, and not, you know, I took my previous company through a Chapter 11 bankruptcy process. And it was gut wrenching, right? It was personal for me. Like, I wanted to get this business out the other end because I believed in myself. But what I realized through that process is, like, this is just another, like, the bankruptcy process is a tool to help companies get better. And a company is a tool to create your purpose, your mission, your wealth, like whatever the outcome is. And once I realized that it was more of a tool oriented, it sort of changed my perspective, to your point about money and that relationship.
Yeah, well said. I agree with you. That's the inside out change that you're talking about, is that you're seeing the money, basically you're assigning jobs to the dollars. And when you start to look at, not, it's wrong for me to not contribute to my retirement account, but instead say, this is a dollar that's going to work for me. It could work in the retirement account, and this is what I can expect from that. It can work on marketing spend, and this is what I can expect from that. They could work on paying my rent next month, next week. And that should probably not work super hard because that's got to be pretty safe. But you start to think about, like, your dollars as little workers for you, and you can kind of assign tasks to them. And then you start to emotionally detach, which is, I think, if I'm going to define financial freedom, I think financial freedom is when you are emotionally detached from your finances as much as humanly possible. I don't care how savvy I got in that valley season. That was very emotional. You can't detach completely. You're still human. But I can tell you that rewind the tape a decade when I was playing ball on a 4-figure salary. You know, I didn't even make 10 grand. I made sub 10 grand. I had no debt. Financially, I guess my picture looked better theoretically, but I was scared about every dollar I earned because, like, I lived in this worry scarcity mindset because I had to figure out how to squeeze a quarter out of every nickel. I had no idea about putting money to work. Not that there was extra or surplus to use at 4 figures, but relationally, I would not have been able to, like we started this podcast, in that headspace with that limited understanding of how the game of money worked. I don't know that I would have been able to sustain the valley season for the length of time and have the endurance required because I had no knowledge. And I wouldn't have been able to do it. So I'm grateful that I was simultaneously experiencing the valley while learning how the game works.
That's really, really well said. Man, I'm going to change gears on you slightly. I'd love to know more about your past, how you grew up, how you got into Major League Baseball. Give us a sense of what that journey looked like.
Yeah, well, I was 6 years old. I graduated from my preschool, and I wrote in my graduation yearbook of preschool, because we had one, you know, under the "what do you want to be when you grow up" category, I wrote baseball player. And there were firefighters and astronauts and vets and other athletes for sure. I'm not alone in that. But it kind of became, now I'm not going to lie and say it was totally my declaration, and that's the type of person I was, like 100% hard-nosed 6-year-old. I just realized, like, that's what I want to do, and I could actually see myself doing it. I guess I was visualizing without knowing that term at 6 years old. I was seeing myself in the major leagues over and over and over. I just believed it. And I loved the game, and I was good at it. So that's fun. You know, if you're competitive and you win, that's fun. You like to keep doing that thing. That's why I don't voluntarily golf because I'm competitive and I'm not good at it. So I'm not going to voluntarily stink at something. So I played and I just kept playing. And I played all sports. I love sports. It was like whatever the season was, that was the ball in the house that I was getting yelled at for throwing. But baseball was my favorite. I was the best at, out of the sports, I was the best at baseball. And I played pitcher, shortstop my whole life. And eventually I started getting pretty, like, I could tell that, hey, this might be a college thing for me potentially. But I was still seeing myself as a major leaguer all the time. I just like, it was matter of fact to me, nobody else. I didn't talk to people about it because I also understand the potential or the statistical odds, I should say, of making it. But I started to ninth graders, 10th grade, I started to talk to some people and say that I want to play D1 baseball. That was like my first out loud admission of what I want to do. Or proclamation maybe is a better word. Anyway, I said that to like family, close friends, and it's interesting where their advice comes from a place of love. I know it does, and protection and fear, but people do project their own insecurities on you. I learned that today with 7 children. People always ask me, "How the heck do you do that?" I'm like, "You could do it too, but anyway." My mom, she was supportive, but also like, well, maybe, but if it doesn't work out, like that's okay too. And you can, even if you don't play college baseball, that's okay. And other people telling me that, that you should probably be realistic about this too. I don't mind you working toward it, but understand that the odds are heavily stacked against you. And then they tell me that however percentage of high school athletes even play any college ball, never mind D1 college. But I used it as fuel and I kept going. And I don't know if it was divine intervention, intuition. I recognized like around then that I can't compare myself to my teammates because they're not going where I'm trying to go. I need to compare myself to the nationally ranked recruits. And the only way to do that at the time was like the monthly East Bay magazines or whatever, Baseball America magazine. I look at those. I read through who's getting scouted. What are their tools? What are their dimensions, like height, weight, all that stuff, trying to figure out where I can get an edge. So I remembered I couldn't compare myself to that. And I also couldn't do what they did if I wanted a different life. Like if I wanted to achieve a different goal, I had to do different things. And I knew that. So I guess from an early age, it makes sense why I'd start a business at 40 with 7 kids. Like I always zigged when people were zagging, that was kind of what I saw. Because if I wanted to live an extraordinary life, by definition, I had to do something extra than the ordinary, like outside the ordinary. And I did that, and I clung to that all the way through to, I got drafted in the 48th out of 50 rounds. There's not even that many rounds anymore, by the San Diego Padres out of high school, Waltham High, Massachusetts. It's an unheard of thing. There might have been one other in the history of Waltham or something that was drafted. And it was for me I guess for me, I don't know how to say it. It solidified what I already knew to be true. I was like, see, I knew I could get there. Now I didn't sign. Interestingly enough, I was going to go to Idaho Falls, Idaho, had I signed, but I didn't. I was drafted as a pitcher shortstop. I had already committed to Northeastern. I said, all right, 48 out of 50. Even then, I'm like, that's not, I could get better than that. Let me see if I can get better than that. So I go to Northeastern, fall of my freshman year, and the coach has a meeting with me and says, look, I don't know where you might fit in our rotation or even if you're going to fit into the bullpen as a pitcher. And I'm in like the back of my mind thinking like nobody else got drafted. Like, what? How can I not pitch at your level? I can get drafted, but I can't pitch here? Like, what? Where did I land? He said, but we like your athleticism and we need help as at catcher. There's no definite catcher right now. And your hands are pretty good, but he was an honest guy. He's like, your hands are pretty good, but you're not fast enough to be shortstop at this level. And I'm like, man, you are insulting me over and over. Is this how this works? But it was great. I needed a dose of reality. He's like, but if your hands work and your arm strength is there behind the plate, like if you can take to it, I think you can do pretty well. So here I am, fall of my freshman year. He throws me in the game. like at the end of the game. This was like a meeting during a game. And he throws me in a catcher I had never caught in my whole life, maybe once in Little League. I mean, and now I'm catching Division I pitchers, and they're throwing hard. Felt like 1,000 miles an hour. It's probably like 85. But I'm blinking. Every time somebody swings, I'm blinking. Like I can't, it hurts my hand. I don't know how to catch. My legs are sore. I'm uncomfortable. This whole game that like is so natural to me became all of a sudden one big pile of work. Like I had to figure it out again. But after that fall season, I called the scout that drafted me because I recognized like back in the day when when the people who were giving me advice about playing professional sports was my mom, who is not an athlete, was, teachers who obviously aren't athletes. I'm like, I know that I need to seek counsel from somebody who is farther along a path that I want to be on. So I took to heart what my D1 college coach said, because he'd been a college coach for a long time and seen a lot of D1 players and has had a bunch drafted. I called my scout to say, hey, my coach wants to convert me to catcher. Like, is that crazy or is that a good idea? Because the scout obviously scouts professional talent. He knows what it takes. And they both encouraged me to do it. And I'm like, well, I'm going to borrow your confidence and your belief, because I don't know, I don't believe it, but I trust you know more than I do in this area. So like, here I go. And I went for it, and I ended up getting drafted 17th round by the Kansas City Royals as a catcher this time, and actually still went to Idaho Falls, interestingly enough. So Idaho Falls, Idaho was in my future, and then I caught for 4 seasons professionally, and after that I pitched for 1 season because the hitting part of catching wasn't working out very well. Catching was okay, but those balls are hard to hit. But they saw me pitch. I ended up doing a little both in my college career, catching and closing. It was kind of like Little League. Like I'd be catching all game, 8th inning or 9th inning, I'd take my gear off and I go pitch. But they had seen me, and it bought me another year of chasing the dream. So I got 5 full seasons in officially as minor leaguer.
That's great. What a story. I love, seeking counsel from those that have been there before. I mean, it's such good advice. And even thinking about being an entrepreneur, it's like you go talk to your parents, you go talk to your buddy who's an attorney or somebody else who's like they don't know what it's like to kind of sign the front of the paycheck versus the back of the paycheck. And it's a real difference, in finding somebody that has been there and done that to give you counsel was really wise. Man, I got to ask you a question about banana ball. Do you track it? The Savannah banana. My kids got me to go to a game this year, and it was really fun from an entertainment perspective. But I would love to know from a baseball enthusiast perspective, is it something that kind of the community embrace, or I just I'm kind of curious of what your thoughts on that, whatever we want to call it.
It's like the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball is what it feels like. Yeah, I can only speak for me. I don't think I've talked to enough guys that have been in the game. I think it's great. I love it. I don't think I would have come out of retirement unless the Bananas called me and said, we want you to play. Not that they would, because they get like big league talent to come play for special guests. They don't need me. But I think it's a lot of fun. It brings a level of energy and excitement to the game. I don't think it's derailing the quality of the game. I'm not necessarily a baseball purist, but I also think like if they're not pretending to be Major League Baseball, they are very much embracing that they are a circus act with uniforms on, like that's who they are, and they live and die by that. And fans go for the entertainment. They don't go because they're trying to see the best of the best compete at the highest level. These guys are good though. Like they are minor leaguers. They're talented players. They're not slouches for sure. And I think that makes it fun. Like they're blending entertainment and baseball. And the biggest stigma of baseball is it's super boring to watch because it's just long and drawn out. The pitch clock sort of helped that. It makes the game faster. But every inning, every play could potentially be a fun thing for them. They have foul ball outs. If a fan catches a foul ball, it counts as an out. That's awesome. It like keeps the fans engaged. I mean, I've seen outfielders do a backflip in game, backflip while like catching a fly ball to them during. It's awesome. That's hard to do, by the way.
I can't even, I couldn't figure out if they're entertainers that learned the game of baseball, or were they, to your point, maybe minor leaguers that have learned how to catch a ball while flipping. But I would also suspect that during practices, you guys are futzing around at times and doing trick plays. Like, so it's probably part of your MO already. It's just now been put on a major stage.
Yeah, you all of a sudden are allowed to do it and encouraged to do it. But for sure, I've seen some really cool, like, how the heck did you do that kind of things during practice when guys are just messing around? Because they're crazy talented. And it is minor leaguers and former like pro players that are there. When I was a mentor with the Kansas City Royals, their minor league, they had a mentorship program for a little while, and then COVID hit, and they just fizzled out. But one of the guys that I was talking with mentoring, he actually is now a banana baller. I don't even know what you call it, but he's on the bananas, and that's just like explains the talent. He was playing double A ball or something, and he's over there now. But yeah, they all can do that already. I mean, not everybody can backflip, but that's a special skill in itself. But they're talented. Like, you can do that stuff messing around, maybe if the coach doesn't see you during batting practice, like catch a fly ball behind your back or something. Don't make a scene. But now they're just on a big stage, encouraged to do it. Do what you can. I mean, the best that we saw was back in the day, Ozzie Smith, shortstop for the Cardinals. His thing was to run out at the start of every game when the Cardinals took their position. He'd run and do like a round-off backflip at shortstop. That's about as banana ballish as the major leagues got, right? But these guys are like, all right, no, go ahead and backflip while you're catching the ball during the game. That'd be perfect.
That's fun. Yeah, it is. It's a lot of fun. I still love the game, but it was a different treat. Man, I'm going to shift back to your wealth management. I'd love for you to talk to us a little bit about your firm, what your philosophy is, who you tend to work with. Give us a sense of your business side.
Sure. Well, the firm is a financial planning investment management firm. I know we started, and it is really the goal. We started by saying, my goal is to help people reconstruct their relationships with money from the inside out. That is the goal. But people don't necessarily come to me day one to say, I think I might have an unhealthy money relationship. Like, I think I need your help. In the same way, they don't go to Jenny Craig to say, look, I think I emotionally eat. Instead, they're like, I got a wedding coming up and I got to lose 20 pounds and 3 inches on my waistline. Like, help me out. So people come to me to say, look, my finances have gotten too complex, too overwhelming. I don't want to manage it. I'm nervous to manage it. I need some guidance on it. So that's where people come to me. And it's through conversations, through some of the teaching and coaching that I'll do with them, one-to-one or one-to-few, that they start to rewire how they think about it, because they're learning about it differently. Like, the language they'll use starts to change. They'll no longer use emotional words like, I'm so bad with my money. I'm so good, but that was a good move. I was terrible. Those are like the emotional responses. Instead, we'd say, look, that didn't go as we planned. Let's course correct. That's a very different, subtle mindset change of how to use money. But we're a financial planning firm. Here's the big difference that I've noticed is, and it's been my belief all along, that's why I joined the industry, with ChatGPT, with Google, with the age of information we're in, it's unreasonable, and I think borderline crazy, for an advisor to think that anybody could have or would not have a financially successful life without them. I think that today, an advisor's role has to be the guide of somebody's financial journey, because anybody can go figure out what investment funds to put money in and just set it and look up in 30 years. Like, pick your index, put it in there, don't look up, probably going to be okay in 30 years. Like, that's how that works. So I always believed that an advisor, needs to be a guide, a coach to help people, like I just shared earlier in this podcast, talk through decisions that aren't necessarily going to be in the textbook that you'll get spit out when you ask a question. to work through that kind of stuff, to be that guide. Like, I've been there, I've done that. Here's what I think we should do. I also think that we live in this direct-to-consumer world where I can order from Amazon and it shows up on my door 2 days later. I don't need to go to a store even as a middleman. We're eliminating the middlemen in so many spots. And financial advising historically is a pure middleman industry where you give me your money, I give your money to a bunch of fund managers, they manage the money, and then I talk to you about how they're doing and if we need to change things and get paid for that. And I just never wanted to be that. I felt like especially, let me back up, especially with the amount of information that's accessible today and the dawn of index funds, I realize if somebody's going to pay me to help them with their money, then they deserve to have me manage it with information that they may not have access to in a way that they understand but don't care to do so and don't have the time or discipline to pay attention to the money the way that I will. If not, do it yourself. Like, if you're going to be in a handful of index funds, you don't need me, right? Like, there's no reason to have me involved if I'm just going to put you in 3 index funds and say, we're going to leave it here and talk to you in 12 months, right? So our investment strategy is an individual stock strategy instead of what I usually see 6 to 8 funds that people are in, each fund holding 200 to 500 stocks, let's say. People are in thousands of companies. I'm owning between 15 and 25 companies for somebody. So we're in a very concentrated, intentionally concentrated, because white papers will show that, I've read white papers that will show that if you can own 0 to 15 stocks, you will up to 15, that will dissipate 80% of the risk of the market. The other, and then 15 to 1,000 only decreases the potential risk by another 3 or 5%. You can spread your money out enough, holding a concentrated position, and not miss out on when your winners really win. Of course, you got to make sure the losers don't lose so bad, but that's why people are paying me. They're paying me to manage money in a different way. And again, that's what we started with. Like, you work with purpose-driven, high-performing providers that are on a quest to live a life that doesn't look like everybody else. That's why the investments that they have mirror everything else they already do in their life. The investments don't look like everybody else's investments because it just is who they are. They recognize, if I want something different, I need to do something different. And there is inherent risk that different could mean worse. I get it. But they're all like me, where it's like, okay, if I pick, let's call it an index fund, I'm intentionally choosing average because you can't do better or worse than the index. You're going to do exactly what the index does. You're going to do the average of the index. And people who share my wiring and mindset, and I'm not saying it's necessarily correct, statistically, we're the minority. Like, we'll actually have a better chance of losing than winning. So I want to say that out loud. Like, you have a better chance of putting in an index fund and just burying your head in the sand for 30 years. And that's okay, because everybody I work with has lived their entire life like me. They've lived against statistical odds their whole time. So they're like, oh, good, another one. Let's go up against this and see what happens. Fully knowing, like, this might not work out as well as if I had just dumped it in an index fund. But at the end of my life, I'll look up and I was in the arena. I never took a seat in the stands. I stayed in the arena the whole time. And that's more important than potentially having a higher return. Now, of course, like, the end goal is to do as well as we can. But it's about the mindset of, like, being in the arena versus intentionally buying a seat in the stands.
I love that. I'm going to start using that quote. So Matt, an audience member wants to get in touch with you. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, I want to make sure I say this. First off, thank you so much for having me on this. This has been such a fun conversation. I will say, if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's just my name, Matt Morizio, at Matt Morizio on Instagram. Send me a DM that you heard this conversation on this podcast. I'll send a link to a video course I recorded. It's free. It'll cost an email address, but it's free. It's 3 probably 6 or 8 minute videos that talk through a lot of the mindsets around money, some blocking and tackling, nuts and bolts about money and investing and things you can do today, how to change your financial future to eventually get to this place where you're not living in this scarcity, complex, worried mindset. You have clarity. You see it as abundant. There's a transformation that this will help kickstart. I'm not saying in 25 minutes I'll change your life, but I will kickstart the process that might eventually be the catalyst to change the trajectory of your future. So I'll offer that course for free for anybody that wants to follow me. That's probably the best place to get in touch with me. My website is reconstructingwealth.com. But I'm pretty active on Instagram. If you want to send a message through the site, I'll see it. It'll come to my email. I'm the one responding. I don't have this team that's of ghost people that are handling anything for me. Right now, it's really important for me to be boots on the ground. So I'm going to be the one that's responding to you.
That's fantastic. And we'll include those links in our show notes as well. So if anyone didn't grab it while Matt was talking, just scroll down and you can find it. Matt, I love our conversation. We went into many different ups and downs and valleys and peaks as we kind of expected to. Your story is fantastic. Keep up this work that you're doing in the financial management arena. It is unique. I love your approach. I encourage you to keep doing it. Audience members, if you got some value out of our show, please like the show, please subscribe. Let's share Matt's message and get his voice out there to our community. Thanks, Matt. You've been a great guest.
Thank you. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Chief Endurance Officer podcast. To hear more inspiring stories and strategies around the endurance mindset, be sure to subscribe below or visit us at chiefenduranceofficer.com. Until next time, keep pushing those limits.